Alrighty, we are back. So we're going to jump back to the into the PowerPoint. Actually recorded some of this information yesterday. I tried to do it via whiteboard. Didn't work out very well, so now I got a PowerPoint slide I made up for yesterday, and then my wife was actually finishing up a European elk skull mount and stabbed herself in the hand with a Havalon, and I had to run upstairs and cut video production and take her to multi-care to get stitches for her. So I guess those out there that know her can give her grief. But anyway, I'm going to jump into this PowerPoint and go over the Quileute system. So I'll share that here. All right, so here we have a couple charts, a chart and a pyramid table. And so I if you look up in the left corner here, there's a couple of examples of the percentage of the run by the month. Obviously, the total is going to add up to 100%. So I tried my best to quantify each individual month. I try to get it as close to what, an accurate representation would be. So I would think most people would agree with these figures. But for the case of what I have laid out here on this model, we're using example one, the figures in example one. So what we have here, we got our total run figure. So you got 8,516 fish projected for the 21-22 return for the entire Quileute system. Within that, you have these are all Fish and Wildlife numbers off of their presentation, but within that, you got 5,900 for the escapement goal, and then you have the abundance over the escapement that they split up between sports and the tribal fishery. So we should probably go back one slide here. And you can see the highlighted pieces, primarily the one here in the Quileute system. Right there it says treaty fishery, 48.7 days, expected catch 6% below allocation, which is more or less a fancy way of saying the tribe's taking 94% of their allocation. I don't know if it surely seems that was worded in a way to get folks to just, I don't know, look past it, or, it doesn't seem quite as threatening as 94%. But that's kind of what it is. And so here's the figure numbers that we're working with, in case anybody wanted to see those. Just that's the state slide. So we'll go back to the breakout. So back to that. So then we have the allocation split. So you take the 2,600 and they cut that in two. And so then you have 1,308 fish on the tribal side and on the sports side. Now that 6% below allocation puts the tribe at 1,230 projected wild steelhead available for them to harvest, which is a pretty substantial amount of wild steelhead. Now on the sports side, the reason that matters is in order for the sports fishermen to meet that similar number, an example here in the box is on the original allocation piece, but it would be easy to just run the number on the new allocation piece. But at a 10% mortality rate, in order for us to meet that figure, the entire run would have to be 13,080 fish, and you'd have to catch every single one of them. And so that just doesn't equate. So I'm a little confused on the allocation in the Quileute system itself. Now, I'm not sure if the hatchery component has something to do with that. I would think it might, but I can't imagine that we catch that many more hatchery fish, because they also have a quota on hatchery fish for their fisheries as well. So I can't imagine that that's the difference. And in any case, even if it is a difference, with weak wild runs, the tribe should be harvesting more on the hatchery side. I understand that for sports fishermen, that's the only fish they can retain, but in the case of opportunity, I say take a few more hatchery fish if you're going to leave more wild fish if they're struggling. It just makes sense to me. And the figures on the hatchery for this season, last escapement report, what are we at? January 14th, January 7th, excuse me. The bogus shield's at 2,279 to the hatchery, which they could have taken half of that. I don't know, net the hatchery creek, I mean, but in any event, and then, when you actually dig into how the run will actually break out, it's that's what we have on the right side here. We have the total run, 8,516 fish. We're going to deduct the tribal harvest because essentially as sport fishermen, I would imagine that the tribal fishing goes on low in the system. And so there's probably no real meaningful crack for the sports fishermen at those fish. So essentially we're going to deduct that from the overall run because we don't have you're not going to have access to those fish prior to them swimming into a gill net. And then we're not fishing in April. And so we're also going to try to quantify the percentage total that April component will make up. And we're going to deduct that as well. And so then in the far right mid column box there, we have the available number of fish for the sport fishery, which, as you can see, is 5,583 fish with a 10% mortality. Now, that's not including the selective gear rules in place. That would be just, fishing from a boat, bait, doing whatever you want to do. The sport mortality percentage is, going to equal out to 558 fish. If you caught every single one of the fish in the run that came in, which, I mean, when you put it in the context of that, it just doesn't, instead of the state creating these fisheries that, forces people to have these gear restrictions and you can't fish from a boat so that, younger people, disabled people, they don't have the same opportunity. If they wanted to reduce impacts, even with just selective gear, maybe certain sections of the river where the fish are handled more frequently, if you will. Maybe there needs to be more isolated restrictions and less of a just broad scale, closures. And so then, with that figure, the total steelhead return of 5,583 fish during the period that fishing is open, you would have to catch the entire run 2.2 times to match that tribal harvest figure. So I just don't see how that, the percentage split here adds up. I guess maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't, it appears that it's a situation where, sorry, you guys can't catch your share, but, we can, so we're going to take them. Because in the opposite flip side of that, you have a system like the Chehalis where, we could say as sports fishermen, well, we're not, we can harvest the hatchery fish and we're not going to have that great of an impact on the wild runs. But there's just not enough wild fish on the table for the tribe to fish, in that particular system and meet the hatchery harvest share of the sports fishermen, because they're going to intercept too many wild steelhead before they hit that. So I just, I use these percentages to kind of break this out and kind of get a picture of how the allocation is. And obviously, as you can see, I would like some answers, I guess, on this part. Maybe I said it before, and maybe I am missing something. I'm not sure, but yeah. So so then we have the co-management issues. I think a lot of people get a little frustrated with, the lack of any kind of engagement with the tribe directly. That's just it. All you hear is, the tribe or the co-manager, and it's almost talking about like a mythical creature. It's like, talking about Sasquatch or something. Nobody really knows, what exactly, the tribe wants, as far as their fisheries and things that, they're striving for. And so it creates a situation where it's hard to, it's hard to reason with what we get. And, there's obviously an inherent potential that the state kind of uses that as a cloak of protection, or whatever you will. I just so it would be really awesome. I think it would change the relationships some, if there was some more engagement with, direct engagement, I guess, with any of the members of any of the tribes. And so in the case of, for, like the system of the Chehalis, where, you have a situation where there's less, wild fish on the impact table, so to speak, that creates a situation where it's more difficult to them for them to harvest their share of the hatchery fish. In these cases, you know, can we potentially implement, you know, some new means of harvest? I've, you know, seen some things like the pound net on the Columbia. That certainly seems like a pretty effective means of doing it, you know, not extremely invasive. You know, would the tribe be open to something like that? You know, that particular system, the Chehalis, obviously it's kind of more closer to a mixed stock and less terminal, because in the lower end there, you know, you got all the fish going all the different ways, and you don't know when you catch wild fish where it's going, versus if you're in the Hoh River, more likely, you know, I'm sure there's different creeks and whatnot, but, you know, that's a little closer to home for that fish. So, you know, and if in these isolated situations, and mainly for steelhead, because I don't think on the salmon side that this is as much of a challenge, but in the case for steelhead, if the tribe isn't willing to adapt with a new means of harvest, you know, and this is kind of almost a marketing pitch, because I think they're sitting on a gold mine and they don't really know it yet. But if in the instance of, you know, the situation where they're not able to meet their quota, so to speak, with whatever component of that is, you know, say, I guess we'll look at this example, I guess, to try to get across what I'm saying here. But here's just an example of the situation. So the allocation for a tribal fishery, 1,684 wild steelhead. And say the tribe, because I don't know what their breakout between cultural needs and, you know, fish that they want to sell is, but let's just say, for the sake of an argument, that the tribe has, you know, 680 fish that they plan on taking for the tribe, which is great. That's cool. And then the other 1,000 fish that they're planning on putting up for sale. Well, you know, could the tribe potentially sell these fish before even killing them? You know, could you make like a virtual fish that gets purchased in the name of conservation? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who, you know, the fish is worth more alive than it is dead. And some of these groups, you know, invest a lot of money just to get these fish to come back. So, you know, to directly be able to get them on the gravel, I think it's a good thing for anybody. And obviously this is only a scenario for the years when the wild steelhead are just, you know, not faring well, and, you know, not meeting escapement and things like that. You know, in the areas where there's plenty of fish over escapement, you know, that wouldn't necessarily make sense unless they were open to it. And they, you know, anyway, it's just a thought. I feel like everybody's kind of, you know, the fish, the sports fishermen and the tribe, you know, I think in an isolated situation that could work as a benefit to everybody. So just an idea. Oh, what do we got here? Oh, how much time are we at? Oh, well, I'll finish this one. This is a pretty short little segment, but I just thought it was worth noting. Last year, the state closed the fishery posted fishery closure was March 3rd. Season was closed on March 8th, and that was predominantly the Chehalis system. I believe there was a couple others in there, but and I highlighted a couple quotes from a paragraph out of the closure notice. There in red, obviously, the numbers that we're seeing are a real blow, and the dire situation of these runs is apparent now. And so I just have to ask, how was the wild steelhead component assessed with last year's high water through early March? I don't know what means the state has for actually monitoring that. It sounds like it was through the gill netting, but I'm not sure how effective or accurate that is for monitoring the actual status of the run, especially with so many water cycles during the course of the season. So I'm not sure how effective they were being when they were actually fishing. I know, I guess, in the Chehalis system down on the lower end, that had to have been pretty swollen for most of the season. And so the next couple slides are just examples of the water cycles we had during the 21 season. And, you know, it just kind of another move the state made that doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but anyway. So here we got the stats at the river. Obviously only a few time frames where that was even in shape for fishing during the open period last year. And I would have to say that the fishing that was done during these periods was probably pretty limited, considering that it was bank fishing only, you know, just with the higher water flows that are generally better for, you know, that's some good jet boat days and some decent drift boat days and, you know, plunking. So, got hump tulips, you know, Nawakum, got the queets. So obviously just pointing out that the water cycles through last season, you know, and even the aspect that, you know, how do they really have that great of a read on the wild component, considering that we're not even, you know, you're not even into the peak of the run yet. So I will stop this video here and pick up on the escapement goals section in just a moment.